Dream of the Red Chamber, Chapter 82.
Daiyu has just returned from school, and the immediate barrage of family expectations is just suffocating.
It really is.
He meets his grandmother, Gia, and her immediate reaction to seeing him is to laugh and say, "The wild horse is put on a halter."
That phrase, right from the grandmother, establishes the core tension of Bayou's entire
A
existence.
halter.
Right. He has a naturally free, poetic disposition, but his family, who basically represent the Orthodox society of the time, requires this rigid, structured existence.
Okay, but to play devil's advocate for a second here, isn't Daiyu just a privileged kid complaining about having to do his homework?
That's a common reaction for sure.
Because, I mean, why should we view this as crushing his spirit rather than just, a teenager resisting basic discipline? A lot of people have to study things they don't like.
It is a totally fair question, but we have to look at the mechanism of what is actually being demanded of him here. This isn't just about doing a few chores before dinner.
Right.
The halter metaphor is about establishing total control over the animal's direction. It is the systemic breaking of a spirit. When Daiyu steps away from his grandmother, he goes to see his father, Jia Zheng.
And that does not go well.
No, not at all. The father interrogates him about his schedule in a way that just strips away every single ounce of Daiyu's autonomy.
The schedule is so intense. The father mandates this relentless daily routine. It's reading books in the morning, writing characters after meals, studying essays in the afternoon.
Constant work.
Absolutely no greed for play, and these strict early to bed, early to rise hours, it literally leaves no room for the person Daiyu actually is.
Exactly. And look at how Daiyu responds to this avalanche of demands. He doesn't argue with him.
He doesn't state his case at all.
Right. He just enthusiastically agrees. He says yes, yes to everything and then immediately retreats.
It feels so intensely relatable. You picture a modern student trapped in this relentless cycle of, like, cramming for the bar exam or doing SAT prep for 6 hours a day.
Oh, totally.
You just nod and agree with your parents or teachers because you don't even have the energy to fight the system directly. The compliance is just a survival mechanism, not actual agreement.
And the physical and emotional toll of that silent compliance is enormous. Verbally, he is wearing the halter, but internally, the pressure is building to a breaking point.
So what does anyone do when they are suffocating under that kind of orthodoxy?
They look for an escape valve.
Right, he needs a safe haven. And logically, fleeing that pressure, he runs to the one person in the world he expects to validate his misery.
His soulmate and fellow rebel, Lin Daiyu.
Yes. He bursts into her room, the Jiaxan Guangguan, and he is, deeply dramatic about it. He declares that enduring just one day away from her felt like a day apart is like 3 autumns.
That line highlights his immense emotional dependency on her and on that specific space.
It's his sanctuary.
Exactly. To Daiyu's quarters represent art, emotion, and freedom. It is the anti-classroom. He fully expects her to be his ultimate intellectual ally against the system.
So he feels safe to just let loose. He launches into this passionate rant against what he calls 8-legged essays.
Yes, a famous rant.
He calls them mere tools used to cheat one's way to fame and make a living. He mocks the writers of these essays as being totally empty inside, creating cow demons and snake spirits while pretending to be profound.
Such vivid imagery.
It really is. Now, before we get to her reaction, what exactly is an 8-legged essay? Because it sounds like a very specific kind of torture.
Well, it essentially was. They are called 8-legged because they literally required 8 specific, rigid sections.
Perfectly explains why Daiyu, our wild horse, despises them so much. They are the ultimate halter.
Precisely.
So he is laying all this out there for Daiyu, expecting her to validate him. But she doesn't. She actually pushes back.
This is a massive turning point in the text. The sanctuary doesn't provide the echo chamber he is desperately seeking. Daiyu introduces nuance and pragmatism into Daiyu's very black and white worldview.
I was in shock on his behalf. It's like finding out your favorite, fiercely independent, underground indie artist.
Just signed a massive restrictive corporate record deal.
Yes, exactly. Why does Daiyu suddenly defend the very system that is making him miserable?
Because she recognizes the reality of their society in a way he completely refuses to.
How so?
She points out that while she, as a girl, doesn't need to take these civil service exams, the essays shouldn't be entirely dismissed. She argues that some of them are actually near reason and clear and profound.
So she's finding value in the rigid structure.
Right. She is telling him that just because the structure is rigid doesn't mean the content is entirely devoid of value. And then she delivers the real blow.
Oh man, this part.
She argues that taking the exams for officialdom is a pure and noble path.
Pure and noble. Those words absolutely crush him. The text says Baoyu is silently devastated. He feels she has become tainted by the desire for power and status.
He still doesn't argue with her.
No, he just laughs it off through his nose.
That nasal laugh is such an evocative detail. It perfectly captures the moment his extreme idealism crashes into her practical acceptance of the world.
It's just so dismissive, but also sad.
He is profoundly isolated right here. The one person he thought saw the universe exactly as he did is essentially telling him to play the game.
So his safe haven is completely compromised. He realizes he has no escape, not even with Daiyu. But the system doesn't care about his emotional isolation at all.
It only demands compliance.
Right. So he retreats back to his own quarters, the Yihong Yuan, and this is where we see the absolute collateral damage of his refusal to conform.
When he returns, the system has already beaten him there.
It's so dark.
His maid Qin reveals a grim warning that came from the master, delivered via the head servant Yuan Yang.
This part is just, it's next-level psychological pressure. The father's strategy is basically, if the son doesn't study, punish the staff.
Exactly.
The warning explicitly states that because Baoyu is being forced to study, any maid caught joking with him will be dealt with severely.
And they specifically cite the fates of two other maids, Qingwen and Siki, as a threat.
Which deeply saddens the head maid, Siren.
It is an incredibly sinister management style. The system doesn't just try to crush Baoyu directly, it threatens his entire support network.
It makes him toxic to his own friends.
Right, it isolates him further by making his very presence, his very nature, a danger to the people he cares about most. It's an enforcement of orthodoxy through intense guilt.
And that guilt physically breaks him. Guilt-ridden, terrified for his maids, Baoyu actually tries to comply.
He really does try.
He sits down at night and tries to study the 4 books. What are the 4 books exactly in this context?
So the 4 books are the foundational texts of Confucianism. They are the absolute bedrock of the orthodox educational system.
Okay.
They represent rules, societal structure, moral obligations, and the strict hierarchy of the world.
Which is everything Baoyu naturally runs from. He finds them utterly confusing. He realizes that while he finds his beloved poetry incredibly easy, he has absolutely no head for these rigid texts.
None at all.
And his anxiety literally spikes. He becomes restless, he complains of being too hot, and he develops a literal fever from the stress.
That's a very visceral reaction.
It is. Think about the last time you were so stressed about a project or an exam that you actually made yourself physically sick. That's what's happening here.
Yeah, totally.
Long before we had terms like burnout or psychosomatic stress, this text is mapping out the exact biological response to an environment that demands you be someone you aren't.
That is a crucial connection. We are seeing how a mind fundamentally wired against the material it is forced to consume will physically reject it.
His body is fighting back.
The contrast is drawn perfectly here. Poetry represents art, fluidity, and authentic emotion. The 4 books represent rigid expectation. His brain cannot synthesize the latter, and his body overheats from the friction of trying.
And the most heartbreaking part is his reaction to the fever. He begs his maid Shirin not to tell his father.
He is terrified.
He is terrified that if his father finds out he has a fever, he will be accused of faking an illness just to skip school. He isn't allowed to be authentically sick, just like he isn't allowed to be authentically himself.
Every aspect of his reality is heavily policed and suspected by the authority figures. But a psychosomatic fever isn't a doctor's note in this society. So, physically exhausted and running a fever, he is forced right back into the arena the next morning.
Back to his teacher's classroom.
Exactly.
And this leads to what I think is the most intense part of the whole excerpt. It's his classroom showdown with his teacher, Daiyu.
It is an incredible scene.
It's his intellectual duel, where the very classical texts Baoyu hates are used to dissect his own character.
Daiyu is a formidable opponent. He doesn't just yell at Baoyu, he tests him. He makes Baoyu analyze 2 specific classical passages to see where his mind is at.
Right.
Let's look at the first one. The prompt is, a youth is to be regarded with respect. How does Baoyu interpret this?
Well, Baoyu gives a very pragmatic, almost cynical answer. He explains that youths have potential, sure. But if they reach 40 or 50 years old without achieving success, then no one will fear or respect them anymore. It is all based on outward achievement.
And Daiyu immediately steps in to correct what he calls Baoyu's childish take.
He completely shuts him down.
He does. The teacher explains that having success, or having when, doesn't just mean getting a lucrative government job or passing exams. It means deeply understanding the way. Daiyu points out that even hermits who withdraw from society entirely can achieve this kind of true success.
I want to pause on that. What does Daiyu mean by the way in this context? Because it sounds like the teacher is actually elevating the philosophy above mere careerism, which you'd think Baoyu would appreciate.
It is a profound point. The way refers to the fundamental moral and cosmic order of the universe according to Neo-Confucian thought.
Okay, so it's much bigger than just a job.
Exactly. Daiyu is telling Baoyu that the education isn't just about getting a job, it is about aligning your soul with the fundamental truths of the universe. He is showing Baoyu that the philosophy he despises actually has deep intrinsic spiritual value. Daiyu is proving he isn't just a mindless bureaucrat, he is a true believer.
Which makes the trap he is setting so much harder to escape. So having established that the stakes are spiritual, not just professional, Daiyu hits him with the second passage.
Right, the second test.
I have not seen one who loves virtue as he loves beauty or physical desire, depending on the translation.
Baoyu immediately feels targeted by this prompt, knowing his own reputation.
But he doesn't back down.
No, he delivers an absolutely profound answer. He argues that virtue is a heavenly principle, an abstract concept, but beauty, or physical desire, is a fundamental human reality.
It's hardwired into us.
Yes, people naturally, innately prefer their biological desires over abstract principles. He says Confucius isn't just condemning people for failing, he is lamenting a biological reality.
To put it in modern terms, it's like comparing the operating system of a computer to its physical hardware.
Oh, I love it.
Virtue is this beautiful, complex software we've coded to keep society running smoothly.
Yeah.
But biological desire, that's the hardware. Baoyu is essentially telling his teacher, you can't get mad at the computer for following its hardwired architecture just because you prefer the software.
That analogy hits the nail on the head. Baoyu is arguing for innate humanism over rigid abstraction. It's an incredibly sophisticated reading of the text. He understands the philosophy perfectly.
Which is the ultimate irony. He clearly understands the material perfectly. He can articulate it better than anyone in the room, yet he absolutely hates it.
And that is exactly where Daiyu springs the trap. If you watch how Daiyu handles this, it is a devastating rhetorical move.
It really is.
Daiyu accepts Baoyu's brilliant answer, he acknowledges his deep intelligence, and then he uses it as a weapon against him.
How so? Walk us through it.
Daiyu essentially says, if you understand the philosophy this well, if you can articulate the difference between heavenly principles and human desires so perfectly, then your failure to apply these principles to your own life isn't a lack of ability.
Oh.
It is a conscious, fundamental character flaw. He tells Baoyu that he suffers from these exact two faults they just discussed, failing to seek the way and preferring base desires over virtue.
Oh, man. He uses Baoyu's own genius to convict him. He corners him with his own intellect.
Precisely. Because Baoyu is smart, he has no excuse for his rebellion. And Daiyu issues a strict ultimatum.
Right, the punishment.
Baoyu has 1 month to review old books and 1 month to write essays. And the teacher ends this showdown with a proverb that serves as the ultimate thesis statement of this rigid educational system.
What was it again?
A person who succeeds is not comfortable. A comfortable person does not succeed.
Wow. A person who succeeds is not comfortable. That sentence alone carries the weight of 1,000 standardized tests.
It really does.
It is the ultimate justification for the halter. It tells you that your pain and your exhaustion are actually proof that the system is working. The scene shifts. We are in the Yihang courtyard. These are, beautifully landscaped, highly refined living quarters.
Very fancy.
Super fancy. And Baoyu, he's off at school for the day. And because the golden boy is out of the household finally has this rare moment of peace.
Everybody can just breathe for a second.
Exactly. The servants aren't scrambling. The strict rules are kind of relaxed. And there is just this pervasive silence.
Okay, let's unpack this. We zoom in on this quiet courtyard, and we enter the internal monologue of a maid named Zirin.
Right, Zirin.
On the surface, she's sitting there peacefully sewing a beetle nut pouch. But inside her head, she is navigating a totally terrifying social minefield.
Yeah, Zirin's situation is incredibly complex. She's not just a standard maid. She is essentially acting as an unofficial concubine to Baoyu.
Wait, unofficial?
Yeah, she has a recognized but sort of informal status as a room-filling maid, which is essentially, a secondary wife in training.
Got it. I was reading her internal monologue, and I couldn't help but compare her to someone trying to survive a hostile corporate merger. Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right, because she has this comfortable middle management position right now, and her current boss, Daiyu, is great. He's easygoing, she knows exactly how to manage him, but the company is about to be acquired.
A merger is happening.
Exactly. Daiyu is going to get married eventually. And if the new CEO who comes in, the primary wife, is ruthless, Shirin won't just lose her corner office. Her entire life will be ruined. And she has absolutely zero control over who that new CEO will be.
None at all. And what's fascinating here is the way Shirin handles that total lack of control. She doesn't just like sit in the courtyard and worry about it. She immediately goes to do opposition research.
Which is so smart.
It is. Jiren takes her sewing and goes over to visit Lin Daiyu. Now, Daiyu is one of the primary candidates to marry Baiyu, so Jiren casually starts complaining about another household situation.
Just casually dropping gossip.
Right. She starts talking about a harsh Taisui, which is basically a tyrant wife, someone who's so cruel she doesn't even care about the outward appearances of decency. Jiren is basically throwing out bait. She's testing the waters to feel out Daiyu's temperament.
Like seeing how Daiyu reacts to a strict wife.
Exactly.
And Daiyu listens to this gossip and drops an absolutely iconic response. She says, and I'm quoting here, in domestic affairs, if the east wind doesn't prevail over the west wind will prevail over the east wind.
It's such a famous line. And that line is really a masterclass in sociological observation. Daiyu is completely stripping away all the poetic romance and the polite veneer of their whole aristocratic life.
She's just laying it bare.
Yeah, she is telling you, the listener, exactly how the mechanics of their world operate. It is a zero-sum game. There is absolutely no sharing of power.
I have to ask, though, I mean, is it really a zero-sum game? Surely in these massive aristocratic households there were, I don't know, alliances or compromises. Why does Daiyu view it purely as crush or be crushed?
Well, it's because of the literal, legal, and social realities of the Qing dynasty for women in these households. Secondary wives or concubines had virtually no legal protections.
None at all.
Almost none. A primary wife had absolute, unchecked authority over the domestic sphere. If she decided to, sell a maid, punish a concubine, or just make their lives a living hell, she could do it with complete impunity.
That is terrifying.
It really is. And we see this with other characters in the novel. Women like Yu Erji or Shangling, who are completely destroyed by jealous, powerful wives. So Daiyu understands that in a system with no legal recourse, power is absolute. You are either the one dominating or you are the one being dominated.
Wow. That makes Jiren's cautious reply so much heavier. She tells Daiyu that when you're a side person, like a concubine, you already feel timid, so you wouldn't dare bully anyone.
Yeah, she's really trying to play defense there.
The tension is just vibrating in the air between them. They're having this totally coded conversation about who will eventually have the power to destroy the other.
And the tragedy of this moment is that just as Daiyu so perfectly articulates this brutal, cutthroat reality, the outside world intrudes to remind her of her own extreme vulnerability within this exact system.
Which brings us to the intrusion. So, an older servant woman arrives right in the middle of this incredibly tense standoff.
Great timing.
Right. And she's from the household of Bao Chai, who just happens to be Daiyu's main rival for Baiyu's hand in marriage. The servant brings a gift of candied lychees from Bao Chai.
Seems innocent enough.
Yeah, but the servant is a bit clumsy, she doesn't really know her way around, and she drops this seemingly casual comment. She stares at Daiyu and says her mistress was right, that Daiyu and Baiyu are a perfect match, like heavenly immortals.
Which totally derails everything.
Shirin completely panics. She frantically tries to shut the servant up, distracting her with tea, and basically just rushes her out the door to deliver the rest of the lychees to Baiyu.
And the servant leaves, totally oblivious to the psychological grenade she just dropped in the middle of the room.
Okay, I have to push back here, or at least ask the question. I think anyone listening is probably shouting at their speakers right now. Why is Daiyu so deeply offended by this?
That's a good question.
I mean, it sounds like a lovely compliment. You and the guy you love are a perfect match. Most teenagers would be thrilled to hear that kind of gossip. So why does it sting her so badly?
To understand the sting, we really have to look at how aristocratic marriages were actually constructed back then. Yes, Daiyu loves Baiyu, and she desperately wants to marry him. But she is an orphan living in her grandmother's house.
Right.
She has no living parents to officially arrange a marriage, to negotiate with matchmakers, to compare horoscopes, and more importantly, She has no formal betrothal to Daiyu.
Oh, I see. It's like, okay, if you ever worked a job on a month-to-month contract, waiting for an official offer letter that just keeps getting you laid, you probably know a fraction of Daiyu's panic.
Oh, exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Every compliment from the boss feels empty, maybe even mocking, until the security is actually in writing. Like, don't tell me I'm great, give me the contract.
That is a brilliant way to look at it. She has no official standing. A proper aristocratic marriage is an alliance arranged by elders with immense formality and literally a ton of paperwork. By treating her future as idle gossip, a low-level servant is highlighting Daiyu's absolute lack of agency.
So it's not romantic at all.
Not at all. It is humiliating. It reminds Daiyu that her future is entirely unsecured, and she has absolutely no power to guarantee the one thing she desperately wants.
Wow. So she successfully rushes the servant out the door and, smiles through the rest of the day. But here is the really insidious thing about aristocratic passive aggression. The servant leaves, but the gift remains.
The lechis are still there.
Exactly. That bottle of candied lychees just sits there in Daiyu's room as the sun goes down, transforming from a sweet treat into this ticking psychological time bomb.
It basically serves as a physical, inescapable manifestation of her rival's secure position and her own very precarious one.
We've all had those moments. You listening to this, I'm sure you know exactly the feeling. You have one awkward interaction during the day, you brush it off, but then suddenly it's 3 a.m.
The worst time.
Right. The house is quiet, you're alone with your thoughts, and that one tiny comment triggers a massive midnight doom spiral. Her mind acts like a faulty, compounding interest calculator. Every tiny social slight from the day gets multiplied by her lack of legal standing.
Yeah, turning a clumsy comment about lychees into an existential debt she just can't pay.
Exactly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see her physical and social vulnerabilities compounding in real time. She stares at the lychee bottle. She thinks about her frail health. She's coughing into the night. She thinks about how she's getting older.
Which was a big deal.
Huge deal. In that era, the clock of marriageability was incredibly unforgiving.
The compounding interest just keeps accumulating.
It really does. She then focuses on her deepest regret, which is the fact that her deceased parents didn't arrange a marriage for her before they died. If they had just done their duty, she wouldn't be in this agonizing limbo.
So she's blaming them, kind of.
A little bit, yeah. And then she scrutinizes the ambiguous intentions of grandmother Gia and her aunts. Why haven't they made an official announcement? Do they even actually care about her future?
So she is just tossing and turning, sighing, dropping tears onto her pillow. It's honestly a full-blown panic attack masquerading as insomnia.
Yeah.
Eventually, she does fall asleep, but it's that really deeply troubled sleep where your waking anxieties seamlessly mutate into your nightmares.
Because dreams strip away all the polite manners of daytime life. The subconscious doesn't care about aristocratic etiquette or saving face. It simply presents your rawest fuels.
And the dream logic takes over instantly. Her old tutor, a man named Jia Yukon, suddenly appears acting as a matchmaker.
Which is already weird.
Super weird. Then comes the ultimate shock. She is told her father is actually alive. He's been promoted to a post in Hubei, and he has a new wife, so a stepmother. And this imaginary stepmother has decided to marry Daiyu off as a continuation wife to some random relative.
Notice how her subconscious pulls fragments from her waking day. The continuation wife, like a second wife status, is exactly the position of extreme vulnerability Jiren was terrified of earlier.
Oh, that's true. I didn't even catch that connection.
Yeah, and the stepmother figure is the classic symbol of a guardian who holds absolute legal power but possesses absolutely no biological or emotional loyalty to the child.
Here's where it gets really interesting and frankly horrifying. The true terror isn't this imaginary stepmother. It's our actual family, the people she lives with, the people who smile at her every single day over tea, how they react to the news.
It's brutal.
Her relatives, and Shifeng, Lady Xing, Lady Wang, even her rival Bao Chai, they all gleefully arrive to congratulate her. They're thrilled to be sending her away.
They are actively celebrating her disposal.
So Daiyu runs to her ultimate protector, her grandmother Jia, who has doted on her for her entire life. She falls to her knees, wraps her arms around her grandmother's waist, and literally begs for help.
She's desperate.
She offers the ultimate sacrifice, saying, I'll stay here as a slave, I'll pay for my own food, just don't send me away. And grandmother Jia, this usually warm, loving matriarch, looks at her with a blank, deadpan face and says, it doesn't concern me. She tells Daiyu that women eventually have to marry, that she's getting a good dowry, and she just needs to leave.
The mechanism of trauma in this dream is so specific. The subconscious targets grandmother Jia because she is the single load-bearing pillar in Daiyu's life.
If she's gone, everything's gone.
Right. If grandmother Jia falls, the entire roof caves in. The horror Daiyu is experiencing isn't just the fear that her family doesn't love her. It's the psychological realization that if her society is built entirely on transactional paperwork and legal alliances, unwritten affection is statistically worthless.
That makes my blood run completely cold. She realizes that behind all the poetry and the luxurious lifestyle, she is living in a purely transactional reality.
Exactly.
She's an orphan taking up space and resources. And when it becomes convenient to dispose of her, all that grandmotherly love vanishes in an instant because it was never legally binding.
And stripped of all familial support, totally cornered by a society that views her as just a movable asset, she turns to her absolute last resort. She turns to Daiyu.
She feels she has nothing left but this unsaid, unconfirmed bond between them. In the dream, she decides that if all love is false, she will just kill herself.
It's so dark.
But suddenly, Daiyu appears. And you think, oh, thank God the hero's here to save her. But this is a nightmare. Daiyu stands there smiling and congratulates her on her new marriage. Daiyu completely loses it. She grabs him, accuses him of being a traitor, and screams, I only came to this house because I was promised to you.
The dream forces her deepest waking desire to the surface, presenting it as a broken promise.
Daiyu replies, no, I am true to you. If you don't believe my words, look at my heart. And this is the moment where the story just aggressively shifts gears into that macabre body horror. Daiyu takes a small knife, and right there in front of her, he slices his own chest open. Blood starts pouring everywhere. He reaches his hand into his own chest cavity, rummages around, and then looks at her in utter panic. He says, my heart is gone. I can't live. His eyes roll back, and he drops dead on the floor.
This raises an important question, right? Why does the author use such extreme, visceral violence in a novel that is mostly known for its delicate poetry?
Yeah, it feels so out of place.
But it's because the emotional stakes for these characters are quite literally life and death. They are trapped in a society where they cannot speak openly about their feelings. Their bond exists entirely in the realm of the unspoken.
How do you prove a contract that is entirely invisible?
Exactly. In Daiyu's nightmare, the only way Daiyu can prove his inner truth is by physically tearing himself open to show her his literal heart. He has to externalize the internal, and the tragic irony is, when he reaches for it, the heart isn't there.
Oh, man.
The one piece of collateral she needed to rely on is just missing.
So Daiyu just starts screaming. She is holding his bleeding body, absolutely terrified that someone will find them and blame her, just weeping uncontrollably. It is the absolute climax of terror.
The peak of the nightmare.
And then the snap back to reality.
All right.
The ending of this excerpt is honestly a masterclass in atmospheric writing. We hear a voice cutting through the screaming. It's her maid, Ziwan, saying, girl, wake up, you're having a nightmare.
The transition from the chaotic, bloody dream back to the physical reality of the bedroom is remarkably sharp. The mind wakes up, but the nervous system is still living the trauma.
Daiyu flips over in bed, wide awake. Her throat is choked with sobs. Her heart is hammering against her ribs. She realizes she is drenched in a freezing cold sweat, and her pillow is completely soaked with real tears.
She's just totally disoriented.
She lies there trying to orient herself in the dark. She remembers, wait, my father has been dead for years. There is no stepmother. Daiyu and I aren't promised to anyone.
But the dread doesn't dissipate just because the facts are corrected.
Right, because she thinks, what if he really does die? What would I do? She is entirely spiritually shattered at this point. She gets up, takes off her outer jacket, gets tucked back into bed by her maid, but she obviously can't sleep.
Could.
The sensory details the author leaves us with are just haunting. She is lying awake, shivering. She listens to the sounds outside, a rustling that sounds like wind but also sounds like rain.
It's so vivid.
She hears the faint breathing of her maid sleeping nearby. A freezing draft of air blows through the window crack, making her hair stand on end. And then slowly, she hears the chirping of the morning sparrows in the bamboo outside as the pale morning light slowly creeps through the paper windows.
The world goes on, the birds sing, the sun comes up, but the illusion of safety has been permanently breached. She's forever changed by what she saw in the dark.
So it's early morning. The source text gives us this beautiful, fragile detail. And inside the room, Daiyu, and she is coughing relentlessly.
Right, and her devoted maid, Ziwan, has been woken up by this coughing fit.
Which is, a scary way to wake up.
Totally. So Ziwan does what any desperate caregiver would do in the early hours of the morning. She urges Daiyu to just stop overthinking, to calm her mind, and try to force herself to get some rest.
But resting is completely off the table at this point.
Oh, absolutely.
Which brings us to the inciting incident that just shatters the morning. Ziwan gets up to empty Daiyu's spittoon the phlegm box, and she gets the shock of her life.
Yeah, this part is so visceral.
She looks inside, and the phlegm is heavily peppered with these terrifying flecks of blood. And Ziwan just completely loses her composure and blurts out loud, "Heavens, this is terrible."
Objectively, that is the absolute last phrase you want to hear from the person taking care of you when you're lying sick in bed.
Right.
I mean, it instantly validates all your worst fears.
And Ziwan realizes she messed up the second the words leave her mouth. Like she tries to violently backpedal.
She panics.
Yeah. Daiyu calls out from the inner room, asking what's wrong, and Ziwan suddenly claims, "Oh, nothing. My hand slipped. I almost dropped the box."
It's such a distinctly human panic response.
It really is. But thinking about the psychology here, it's like trying to hide a shattered plate from a parent after they've already heard the crash.
That's a great analogy.
Like it's a futile attempt at protection. Or like trying to throw a blanket over a blaring fire alarm.
Right. The danger isn't the noise of the alarm. The danger is that you both know the house is burning and you're just pretending you didn't hear it.
Exactly. The crash has already happened, and the damage is irreversible.
And the sensory details the text provides to show us how Daiyu pieces this truth together are just brilliant.
Oh, they're so intense.
Because Daiyu doesn't even need to lay eyes on the box to know exactly what is inside it.
Right, because her own body is already giving her the answers.
First, there is the internal physical sensation. Daiyu already felt a sweet metallic taste in her throat before Ziwan even looked in the spittoon.
That terrifying taste of blood.
Exactly. Second, she processes Ziwan's sudden, highly unconvincing lie. And third, perhaps most devastatingly, she hears the unmistakable sound of Ziwan weeping.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When Ziwan speaks again, her voice is cracked with sorrow.
The text describes it as this incredibly miserable nasal sound of choked back tears.
And, in this highly intimate master-servant dynamic, they know each other's rhythms perfectly.
They spend all their time together.
Right. So silence and voice cracks communicate far more than actual vocabulary ever could. Daiyu deduces the terrifying truth instantly.
And the text tells us her heart just sinks. It goes completely cold.
Which leads right into Ziwan's desperate attempt to fix the psychological freefall she just caused.
She tries to comfort her mistress, right?
Yeah. She quotes a proverb, "Where there is a green hill, there is wood to burn."
Meaning, basically, as long as you preserve your life and health, there is always hope for the future.
Right. And then Ziwan reminds Daiyu of her support system. She explicitly mentions the absolute authorities of the house, the old lady and the lady.
She says these elders love her dearly.
Yep, but the psychological complexity of the narrative reveals itself in how spectacularly this backfires.
Okay, wait, I want to look closely at Ziwan's strategy here, because I have a logical question for you. If you are sick and someone tells you that your family loves you and wants you to get better, that should be comforting, right?
Not even a little. Instead, it reminds her of a recent, deeply traumatic nightmare she just had.
The one about losing their protection and being abandoned.
That's the one. Ziwan's words bring the absolute terror of that dream crashing violently into her waking reality.
And the physical reaction the text describes here isn't just sadness. It is visceral trauma.
It really is.
The moment she is reminded of this dream, Daiyu feels a literal crash in her heart. Her vision goes completely black. Her entire expression changes.
And then the unthinkable happens.
Yeah, she coughs up a terrifying strand of dark purple blood.
We are looking at the absolute core of Daiyu's character here. Her mind and body are not separate entities.
Psychosomatic illness taken to a lethal extreme.
Exactly. Her physical deterioration is inextricably linked to her emotional isolation and internal despair.
It's wild to think about.
The psychological shock of the attempted comfort literally ruptures something inside her physical body.
It is a brutal illustration of the mind-body connection. So, obviously, the maids are absolutely terrified. Daiyu is dizzy, falling back, semi-conscious.
Total panic in the room.
Ziwan realizes things have reached a critical threshold. So she signals for another maid, Swan, to run out into the estate and get help.
And this is the moment the claustrophobic life-or-death tension of the sick room collides head-on with the reality of the broader household.
Talk about a jarring transition. So Daiyu is trapped inside by her physical decay, right? but her isolation is actually being manufactured by what's happening outside her door.
Oh, totally.
Swayan rushes out in a panic, only to physically bump into two other maids from the household, Quilu and Quimo.
Their mistresses are currently busy critiquing a painting. Shichun has drawn a picture of the estate's Grandview garden, and they are all gathering to debate its artistic merits.
It just highlights the profound structural isolation we were just talking about.
Exactly.
And when Swayan tells these maids what just happened, their reaction is shock, but it's immediately filtered through a very specific kind of bureaucratic panic.
Right. They say, "Why didn't you tell the old lady? You are so foolish."
Their very first instinct isn't medical care.
No, it's about the hierarchy. It's about ensuring the proper reporting channels for a crisis are followed so they don't get in trouble.
And the craziest part is, Daiyu actually overhears this exchange.
Even though she's in critical condition.
Yeah, she pulls the maids inside the room, and what she does next shows the crushing weight of social etiquette.
It's honestly hard to read.
She downplays her illness entirely. She says it's not a big deal, she's just a little weak. She insists on maintaining social decorum.
Like, oh, just invite your mistresses over for a visit later, after breakfast, if they have free time.
But then, the facade cracks just enough for her to ask one question. She casually asks the maids about Daiyu.
Did he go visit them?
Right. And that seemingly casual question is really the emotional anchor of the entire chapter.
Because the maid, Quimo, drops a piece of news that acts as the final nail in Daiyu's mental coffin.
Quimo says no, Daiyu has been forced to go to school.
Right. His father is strictly checking his homework every single day.
He can no longer run around the inner estate freely like he used to.
And to understand why this is so devastating for you listening, we have to look at the patriarchal mechanics of this society.
Break that down for us.
The men and boys are the only ones with true mobility. They're being groomed for the public sphere, for exams, for bureaucratic duty.
While the women are largely confined to the inner chambers.
Exactly. And Baiyu was Daiyu's only true ally in this massive, indifferent house. He was the one person who rejected those rigid social expectations and truly understood her emotional depth.
He was her lifeline to feeling human.
Precisely. And now she learns that the patriarchal machine has swallowed him too. He is trapped by his duties and strict educational expectations.
And the text notes that upon hearing this, Daiyu falls completely silent.
She doesn't say another word to them.
The illusion of their shared rebellion is over.
The institutional duties of the family have pulled her only ally away, and she realizes she is truly, utterly alone in a crowd of hundreds.
That silence speaks volumes. But we leave the devastating quiet of the sick room, and the text shifts focus to the other girls in the house.
Tanshin Jianyun and the artist herself, Shin.
Yifli, the ones currently debating the garden painting, arguing over whether the trees in the painting are drawn too sparsely or too densely. So their maids finally return and break the news. They announce that Daiyu just coughed up a box of bloody phlegm and looks terrible.
And the reactions of these three girls offer a masterclass in how different human beings process uncomfortable reality.
Oh, absolutely. Let's start with Sichin. Her reaction is particularly chilling.
It is a profound moment of philosophy used as a shield against tragedy.
Because Sichin doesn't gasp. She doesn't cry. She basically says, well, Daiyu is very smart, but she takes things way too seriously. And then she poses this incredibly cynical question to the room. How many things in the world are truly real?
And in that environment, Shichun advocates for complete emotional detachment. She questions the fundamental reality of everything as a way to avoid feeling pain.
Which contrasts so sharply with Daiyu.
Completely. Daiyu's fatal flaw is that she feels absolutely everything too deeply. Shichun chooses to feel nothing to survive.
While Daiyu feels so much that it is literally destroying her physical body.
It's a heavy, cold way to navigate the world.
But, social obligation demands action, so Tanchun and Jin Yun pause their art critique and walk over to visit Daiyu in the sick room.
And this visit is an unmitigated disaster from the second they walk through the door.
Because the entire interaction is performative, both sides know it's a mandatory social ritual, not an act of genuine care.
Right. Daiyu forces herself to sit up and be polite.
But internally, the text tells us she's incredibly bitter. She knows they only came because their maids happened to bump into her maid in the courtyard.
She assumes they wouldn't have bothered to come out of true concern otherwise.
The air in the room is just thick with this forced, suffocating politeness.
And the tension builds until someone finally shatters the polite illusion.
Yes, that someone is Xiangyun. The text specifically notes she is young and incredibly blunt.
A dangerous combination in this house.
Very. While Tanshin is making polite, meaningless small talk with Daiyu, Ziwan the maid is standing behind Daiyu's back.
And she's silently, desperately pointing at the spittoon.
Jiang Yin sees the pointing, walks over, grabs the spittoon, and just loudly exclaims in absolute horror over the blood inside it.
She says the quiet part out loud. She drags the horrific biological reality of the situation right out into the center of this highly curated, polite room.
There is such a profound takeaway here, because sometimes the most destructive force in a fragile ecosystem isn't malice, it's absolute unfiltered honesty.
Wow, yeah.
Remember earlier in the morning, Daiyu was too dizzy and overwhelmed to actually look inside her own spittoon? She deduced the blood, but she hadn't laid eyes on it.
Right.
But now, because Xiang Yin is making such a massive scene, Daiyu is forced to turn and look at it. She sees the undeniable physical reality of her own blood.
And the text describes her reaction with this haunting phrase. Seeing it causes her spirit to be utterly crushed, leaving ashes half her heart.
Seeing the visual proof of her own mortality just breaks whatever fragile psychological denial she had left.
The polite illusion is shattered entirely.
So now the reality is out in the open, and Tanshin, the other visitor, has to step in to do immediate damage control.
Which is the ultimate example of covering up an ugly truth with a socially acceptable lie.
Exactly. Tanshin immediately scolds Jiang Yin for overreacting, calling her fussy and dramatic.
She minimizes the trauma.
And then she invents a medical excuse on the spot to neutralize the tension.
She tells Daiyu, oh, it's nothing to worry about. It's just lung fire rising up. A tiny bit of blood is perfectly normal. It happens all the time.
Okay, we need to explain the mechanics of lung fire here for you listening.
Yeah, so in the context of traditional medicine of the era, lung fire implies a temporary internal heat or inflammation, often brought on by emotional stress or seasonal changes.
It is a highly convenient diagnosis.
Very. By slapping the label of lung fire on Daiyu's condition, Tanshin is providing a polite, non-fatal, and temporary excuse for a terminal symptom.
She is literally using medical terminology as social spackle.
That's exactly what it is.
And having delivered this incredibly unconvincing diagnosis to cover up the grim reality, Tanshin hastily tells Daiyu to rest and retreats from the room as fast as politely possible.
It is an attempt to restore order through sheer, forceful denial. Tanshin cannot handle the emotional weight of Daiyu's actual deterioration, so she sanitizes it and escapes.